Hello, everyone, and welcome to this new episode of Open Book Entrepreneur. I am thrilled that we have John with us here, all the way from West Coast, and he's basically a business fixer. So, yeah, John, please introduce yourself to our audience.
Oh, thank you, Tony. My name is John. I live on the west coast of the United States near Los Angeles, California. Um, my business is designed to help you fix your business in ways that allow you to have your business run even when you're not physically there, to implement processes and procedures and even systems so that everything runs consistently from day to day and your employees know what to do whenever anything arises.
And John, can you tell us, please, also how is this possible? Because most of the small business owners, they're really in this from when I'm speaking to them and stuff, and maybe I'm also guilty of this myself. Like generally, I think that I am doing the things in the best way, for the business and stuff. So how can we let go of this? How can we make sure that, systemizing a business in such a way we can actually let go of the control on a like day-to-day basis and sort of systemize the business in such a way that it can run on its own.
Well, the first thing is, Tony, that the individual business owner has to be willing to do this. If they're not willing to let go at all, then there's really nothing I can do for them because it has to start with that person. They have to want the change, just like a change in anything else in our lives. They have to want it. Secondly, it's a lot about developing trust with your employees and also maybe to an extent who you hire. If you don't hire anybody who is willing to take on the extra work, who is willing to um, what's the right word, to expand themselves into another role, then you're kind of stuck. You might have to do that first. But if you get to the point where you tell somebody, this is the procedure on how we do this particular thing, and then you turn that over to them, to the, you have to, in some cases, it's even a good idea to document what those steps are. And that way, whenever there's a question, they can always go back and read the documentation and how the procedure works. It's also great for training new employees. A new employee comes in and say, let me explain to you how this procedure works. And then they see it written down. And that way, it's not different depending on who's telling them how to do the particular job or the particular activity. I think part of two, the first thing is business owners get so caught up sometimes in answering emails and answering phone calls. They're not spending any time on developing their business. They're doing all the activities. And I recommend that the first thing everybody do is that they pass some of that off. You don't have to read every email, only the important ones. So you have to train somebody to differentiate and how to answer those. You don't have to answer every phone call. You can train people on how to answer phone calls and give, the answer that you want them to hear. In other words, you have to stick with whatever the business process is.
Totally, totally. And how can someone actually, is your system also helping people pre-qualify their leads, for example? Because that's one of the things that a lot of business owners, small business owners are spending time on, like, making sure that the leads are qualified. So they have to maybe jump on one call, talk to that person, understand if this is exactly the right client and if they have the solution for them, and then go from there to the next sales call and do all these different things. So
Well, yes, I believe that is possible and that we can work out a system to do that. A lot of it is going to rely on it's business specific, and it may even be specific to your particular business and what you do.
mhm.
And then how do we qualify somebody? What are the things that we know from experience are good? What are red flags that tell us this is probably not going to work? And the sooner we can get to the red flag, the sooner we can quit talking about it
Mhm.
and spend our time somewhere else instead of spending a lot of time with someone that's never ever going to engage with us and be, and do business with us.
Totally. And what inspired you, John? What inspired you personally to actually get into this line of business?
Well, a couple of things is at one time I did technical support for a software company. And I was amazed at how many people that I spoke with. And I didn't just speak with, the end user. I spoke with the business owners, with their accountants, their HR people on things. And as I worked with them, I began to realize that some of them really didn't understand in essence what their business was and what they were doing. So I helped them a lot in that way. But also was very much inspired by um, gosh, I can't remember the guy's name. We talked about him, Robert,
Robert
with Rich
Kiyosaki.
Dad,
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
Rich
Rich
Dad
Dad,
Poor
Poor
Dad,
Dad.
and also Michael Gerber with the E-Myth. Both of these books I've read many years apart, but it's taking the combination of those three experiences and realizing that too many business owners spend way too much time in their business. They do not have the joy anymore that they had. That if you can't take a vacation, all you're doing is working. And as a result, you miss things in life. You miss the relaxation. Maybe you're missing birthdays or anniversaries or weddings or something because you're so busy in your business that it becomes your life and everything outside of your life is no longer meaningful.
And by sort of using your services to help them actually optimize your business, their business, they can overcome this issue. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? How that will look like? How that usually looks like?
What this usually looks like is it's not that I am going to tell you how to redo your business, okay? Because I don't know your business like you do. But what I can do is train you on how to develop a process. And maybe we just take one process and we work that out. And then you have the tools to start developing other processes. You can look at how you want, like let's just take for instance, if you have a brick and mortar store and you have material coming in for inventory, there's a whole process for receiving it, checking it off, getting it into inventory, putting it away where it's supposed to go, maybe rotating stock if it's necessary. There's an entire process for that. And you need to develop that so that your people can do that. Maybe you get a lot of phone calls. How do we answer the phone? And I mean, what do we say when we answer the phone? How do we respond to certain types of inquiries? When do we say no? When do we pass it to someone who maybe has more experience than I do when I'm answering that call? That's a whole other process. Maybe you have an entire process for how your accounting work is done. Now, most accountants, if you have a real accountant, they have a procedure. But if you have someone inside your office that's doing something, maybe they're using QuickBooks as an example. How do you process this? How are invoices handled? How are checks handled? Many business owners make the mistake sometimes of, especially when it comes to their their bookkeeper, is the bookkeeper does everything. They take the money, they dispense the bills, all of that, they balance the checkbook, which is really a recipe for disaster. Because if you never look at your accounting, you don't know what your accounting's doing. And so you have to at least have some basic idea of how this works and and I always recommend to people, if you're the business owner, you balance your checkbook, not your accountant, not your bookkeeper.
Why is that important?
Well, it's important because you can see the incomes and the outgoes, and you know where the money's going. And you can always pull it up and go through and pull it up against an invoice or against a receipt and make sure it's there, because someone has to check the checker. Someone has to make sure that your money is in your account and not walking out the door with somebody else. Many businesses have woken up one morning to find out that their bookkeeper has left along with an awful lot of their money because they didn't bother to keep track of it. So, and for some people that sounds crazy. Say, well, that would never happen. My wife does this, or my mother does this, or my cousin does this. Well, things happen in life, and sometimes people are not who you think they are. And
Or they just make mistakes if you don't check them.
right,
Oh.
right. Maybe somebody comes to you with great credentials, but then they have a crisis in their life you don't know about, and they feel compelled to do this. So it's a way of keeping track with you. At least here in America, if you've got issues with payroll, I used to support payroll and human resource software. I know a lot about payroll and things, and I have some ideas on how to streamline some of that for you, make your life a little easier, take something off your plate with that. So there are different systems depending on what you're doing.
Totally, totally.
Maybe a whole onboarding process for a client. How do you bring it, especially, maybe you're doing something more creative. How do you onboard a client? What are we going to do? How do we present? So that you have consistency in your process, so that every time a customer comes in, they get the same kind of experience. And this all develops into what I think you could call your customer experience. What does your customer experience when they come to you? And is it consistent when every time they come to you?
And
Good
what?
or bad, is it consistent?
Yeah. And what's your sort of like major tip that you can share with us to help someone who is actually thinking about systemizing their business?
The big tip I have is you have to take a good hard look at what you're doing, and you have to be willing to let go. So what I think of is this, is I want you to imagine that you're on vacation. Let's just say you're in the Bahamas. Okay. You're on a 2-week vacation. Now, most of your people listening to this podcast could probably never consider 2 weeks away from their office. But in the morning, or at a particular time of day, depending on time zones, you call and check with your business and find out what's going on. What were yesterday's numbers? What's going on today? And because you've put all these metrics in place, if you're in a good spot or a bad spot. And now just imagine that, being able to do that, coming back from vacation refreshed, and knowing your whole business hasn't fallen apart, that it's been humming along. And
I mean, there's a lot of examples that show once the owner actually took a sidestep in the business, that business actually bloomed.
yes, and in some cases, yes, some of your employees have some of the best ideas. I remember reading one time about a problem this company was having with developing a product. And so they decided to get in this conference room, and they had all of their top engineers and scientists sitting in this conference room trying to figure it out. Well, in another conference room, they got all the support staff, all the secretaries, admin, all of that, and they had somebody come in and explain what the problem was. Do you know that group came up with a solution 2 hours before the other guys? Well, part of that was, I think, because someone had to explain to them what was going on, which means you now get into detail out loud. And secondly, because they don't know anything, they're asking questions that you wouldn't even think to ask because, oh, no, we can't do that. And all of a sudden, a light bulb goes on. I've experienced this myself in business, where I remember one time I couldn't figure something out on some coding I was doing. And as I was explaining to my wife the problem, the answer came into my head. We've all experienced this. But now think about this on a much bigger scale in your business with your own people.
Totally, totally. And if someone wants to actually learn more about working with you or connecting to you or finding out about what you do, how they can do that?
Well, they can email me. I'm going to spell this out for you.
I mean, you can just say it, and then I can
Okay,
in
they
the
can email
description.
me
Yeah.
at johnarntz@valhallabusinesssolutions.com. Or if you're in the United States, well, actually anywhere, if you wanted to call me, You can call me at area code 909-827-4566. And you can at least leave a voicemail message and then I can get back with you on that.
Wonderful, wonderful. And just before we go, if there's any like final tip or word of wisdom or something you want to share with our audience that I didn't ask you, what would that be?
That tip would just be to take a step back and look at your business from like you're on the outside looking in. Be critical of what you see and what you know you can fix and maybe knowing what you can't fix and you need help on, and then seek out that help. Even if it's another business owner, make contacts. If you know other business owners, people in your neighborhood, whatever, talk with them. Create your own mastermind, if you will, in an area where you can all talk about business and share ideas with each other.
Great. John, thank you so much for being a guest and sharing your wisdom. Thank you all for watching and listening to this episode. If you liked it, drop us a like and also subscribe. And on top of that, share it with your friends and family. And see you all in the next episode. All the best and bye-bye.
Thanks a lot, Tony.